Good morning. I would like to thank my good friend Amos Yadlin and all the people of INSS for holding this important conference, and especially for the important questions that are being raised in it. With your permission, I will focus on the central security issue which has been keeping us awake for 10 years, and especially in the past 3 years since I have been a member of the Security Political Cabinet of the State of Israel. The main threat to Israel's security comes not from the north or the south, not from the rockets of Hamas and Hezbollah, and not even from Iran. Not the political deadlock is the central threat, but rather our own conceptual deadlock, our conceptual freeze, not it's not, I'm talking about the concrete barriers that have been put up in the streets of Jerusalem, but rather the barriers in our minds. Israel is being dragged time and time again after the reality instead of initiating, and that to me is the greatest danger to the security of the State of Israel. Israeli history has taught us some important and dear lessons about the danger of being drawn in by the conception. In the history of the Yom Kippur War, we know what Moshe Dayan said during one of the first cabinet sessions after the war broke out. He said, we and others had a correct assessment about what happened and a wrong assessment about what would happen. And his words reflect the story of the Yom Kippur War in its entirety. We all know where that conception led us, and we all recall what happened when we prepared for the previous war. The years have passed, the threats have changed shape and spread, regimes have fallen apart, but the conceptual petrification remains. The comfortable conception about the IDF being the best army in the world and our soldiers being the best in the world, as right as it is, doesn't turn our strategy, the strategy of the captains and leaders of our security system, to be right. The reality around us proves that our enemies are not standing in place. In Lebanon, Hezbollah is continuing to arm itself and prepare for the next campaign with Israel. From an organization that once held just a few thousand imprecise missiles, we have a semi-military organization that now holds one of the largest arsenals of precise rockets in the world. And in Syria, the civil war continues, and so far it has taken the lives of about 250,000 civilians in a war that is continuing to split into new fronts, militias, and local tribes. In Gaza, the situation is known. When Gaza left the Gaza Strip, it revealed the lie of the conception that withdrawal would bring peace or international legitimization. It is not the world that rained down the rockets at us, but rather the diplomatic war from Goldstone to Chavez and the Marmara that rained down the rockets. The place where we are most hurt in the international field is Gaza, the only place where we did everything we were told to do. We came back to the 1967 lines, we gave territory to Abu Mazen, and we took out our people. What all these things have in common is the strengthening of the extremists and radicals at the expense of the stable countries. In Jordan, too, we are contending in recent years with threats coming from ISIS on the one hand and the huge waves of migration on the other hand. In the early days of the Arab Spring, over 1 million refugees entered Jordan, most of whom live under the poverty line. The situation in that country is very difficult. Egypt is contending with the implications of ISIS, and the terrorist attacks of ISIS have taken a great toll in Sinai and in Egypt, and there they are trying to expand their activities, although there I see that the situation can possibly be contained. In addition to the deterioration of states, there is another phenomenon. That is the creativity of our enemies and their determination to innovate. All these are continually improving. In order to illustrate the challenge we are facing, let's move to nostalgia in a completely different area. Until recently, we would take pictures with film cameras, Kodak, and we would answer Nokia telephones. Just 10 years ago, we all had Nokia telephones, and we would buy entire shelves of the Encyclopedia Britannica that put out new editions every few years. Those companies worked devotedly and professionally. Nokia constantly added new functions and features to their telephones, and they tried to make them smaller. Kodak constantly improved the quality of the picture, and they added lots of new options to their cameras. And the Encyclopedia Britannica consistently updated the volumes, and despite their devoted and professional work of these wonderful companies, all three no longer exist. Nokia has been sold. Kodak went bankrupt, and the Encyclopedia Britannica stopped printing after 244 years of activity. How did these great giants fall? What happened to them? This phenomenon has a name. It's called disruptive innovation.
Disruptive innovation.
In the face of these giants, a new concept arose. In Apple, in the iPhone, they stopped running after the pursuit of features, and they understood that what is mostly important is the user experience. It's a new approach. No longer do you need a pamphlet, a manual to show you. You remember in the past we used to get a manual that you had to look through for a few hours to learn how the telephone works. No longer. We don't even remember that anymore. The digital cameras have replaced the film cameras, and Wikipedia, which is shared, just completely overran the encyclopedia market. I would like to emphasize these companies did not fail because of bad management or lack of devotion, and not because of technology. They were managed wonderfully with excellent people, with excellent management perceptions, very advanced, but in light of a petrified approach that was unable to innovate. That happens because the company is too invested in the existing product and market, and it is constantly working on incremental improvements, and that's why it's called disruptive innovation, because the innovation disrupts the very basis of the existing model, which was so successful until now. Disruptive innovation exists not only in the world of high-tech and not only in the economy, but in the security political area as well. And disruptive innovation of our enemies is turning our incredible improvements and makes them irrelevant. We just turned our heads and the enemy is in a different dimension of operations. And I will talk about this disruptive innovation now. In recent years, our enemies have realized that they will never be able to defeat the IDF in a symmetric, conventional confrontation. And so they went to the asymmetrical fronts, to new dimensions, firing rockets from among populations, underground warfare, and the delegitimization campaigns. And all this effectively neutralizes our advantages. And in face of the destructive innovation of our enemies, Israel has remained behind. And therefore, we must renew ourselves not only in arms, but in approaches. All the F-35 planes, which are so expensive, they don't help against 50 commando Hamas fighters who are tunneling underground to a kibbutz in the south. And the newest armor that we have will not protect us against the BDS campaign, which has become a basic element in the strategy against Israel. Why? Because it can neutralize large percentages of our physical strength. So all the arms in the world won't help you if your hands are tied. In the face of this disruptive innovation of our enemies, we need to generate an innovative, creative, clear security
יש לנו
approach.
מערכות נשק
We have
מהמתקדמות
armed
בעולם.
systems among the most
חיילים
advanced in the
והלוחמים
world.
שלנו
Our
מופלאים
fighters
ודופקים על
and
האויב
soldiers
שלנו
are the
בכל
best in the
עימות
world
ישיר.
and can overcome the enemy in
גבורתם
any
לא נופלת
direct
מגבורת
confrontation.
הדורות הקודמים.
Their bravery
וגם
does not
זכינו
fall from that of
ברמטכ"ל
previous
מעולה.
generations. And we have an
גדי
outstanding Chief of
הכניס
Staff,
רוח
Gadi
חדשה
Andescan,
למערכת,
has brought a
מנער
new
מה
spirit into the
שצריך,
system and
והוא
is
אדם
shaking
בעל
it
ענווה,
up, and he is a
קשב
humble person. He knows how to listen, and he
לכן
has
הבעיה
quiet
היא לא
leadership.
באיכות
And so the problem is
ולא
not in the
בלוחמים
quality
ולא
of the
במפקדים.
arms or in the
הבעיה
quality
היא
of the fighters or
במאובנות
their commanders. The
התפיסתית.
problem is in the
בהיסטוריית
petrification
הלחימה,
of
הוכח לא
our
פעם
conceptual
המעז, הלומד
petrification.
והמתחדש,
We know in the
הוא
past those who
המנצח.
dare, they
בתווך
win.
בין מלחמת
But
העולם
between
הראשונה
the First
לשנייה,
World War and the
הבעיה
Second World
העיקרית
War,
של
the
צבאות
main
המערב
problem of the
הייתה
Western armies
מאובנות תפיסתית,
was
קונספטואלית.
conceptual petrification,
הצלחת הוורמאכט
fossilization.
הייתה
The
נעוצה
success of the Wehrmacht
קודם כל ביכולתו
was based,
לנצל
first
את
of all, on its
התקופה
ability to take
לקפיצת
advantage of the
מדרגה
period
תפיסתית,
to
לתפיסת
take a
הגישה
conceptual
התקיפה
leap.
של לידלר, תוך שימוש בתמרון
The ideas of
ועוצבות
Lira to
שריון
use
מהירות,
maneuver
בעוד
with
שצבאות המערב
armed,
עדיין ראו
armored
בכך
forces,
כלי עזר
whereas
מקומי
the West
לכוחות
still
החי"ר.
viewed the tank as an
היתרון
auxiliary
התפיסתי של
weapon to help the
הוורמאכט
infantry.
הוא
The
שהכריע את הקרבות
conceptual
באירופה.
advantage of the Wehrmacht is what won the war in the beginning for them. And that too was disruptive innovation. Disruptive innovation also helped in the ancient past, in the ancient history of our nation. For example, in the Battle of Gideon, Gideon suffered from inferiority in almost every parameter: the number of fighters, the arms that he had, and the topographical conditions, which gave an advantage to the Midianites who were fighting on the hilltop, while Gideon was in the valley. But what he did have was conceptual agility and creativity, and that led him to fight psychological warfare. With only 300 warriors that he divided up into 3 groups with torches covered with horns, and he was able to defeat the Midianites. These 2 examples prove that a conceptual advantage is what wins the war, even in situations of economic, numerical, and technological inferiority, and vice versa. Conceptual inferiority can cause one to lose the war, even when you have economic, military, and numerical superiority. I was exposed to this personally about 10 years ago in the Second Lebanon War, a war in which I was amazed and shocked to discover how a sovereign country with a huge army and the most advanced weaponry was unable to defeat a small terrorist force. I was in the eastern sector of southern Lebanon, and the problem there was not only how the soldiers functioned and the lack of training exercises. I say that even if the troops had been able to meet the tactical goals set for them, and if they had been able to carry out the plan, which was very unclear, I must say, Israel would not have made any achievements there. Even if the forces had fully taken over Bin Jbeil, how would taking over Bin Jbeil have stopped the rockets and brought back the POWs who were defined as the goal of the wall? In other words, the problem was not in the conception, the problem was in the conception and not in the carrying out of the conception. After the war, we were told on more than one occasion that the conclusions were drawn, our forces went back to training, we have better intelligence, and we come back to ourselves. We recovered. And then we got to Operation Protective Edge, and during the campaign, I was no longer a field commander, but rather a member in the security political cabinet of the war. And from the cabinet room, I saw once again the gap between the quality of the soldiers and commanders and the quality of the strategic conception within which they were working. The fighting proved once again that the IDF has outstanding, courageous, and daring fighters and commanders. There was in the criticism of the Second Lebanon War was not true in Operation Protective Edge. The commanders at all levels are deserving of all praise, and their outstanding performance was in contrast to the pale performance from above. Although we knew there were tunnels being tunneled into our territory, we remained captives of the conception that Hamas didn't want to use them. We remember day after day there were debriefings in the media that Hamas was deterred and they didn't predict how forcefully we would respond. But none of that prevented Hamas from continuing to fire rockets, even when there were pauses in the fighting. The ones that violated those pauses was always Hamas. Hamas wanted to continue and renew the campaign, and at the same time, ladies and gentlemen, those same tunnels that we said that they would never dare to use, they showed us how wrong we were. The tunnels were not a plan for a rainy day. They were actually the plan of Operation Protective Edge. And when the army wanted to continue to destroy the tunnels, it was the upper echelons that forced them to stop. And that's how it continued. Another hour, another week, another 51 days, almost 3 times the length of the Yom Kippur War. The result was a lack of decision, a lack of a decisive victory. And, ladies and gentlemen, if Israel was a country that was unable to innovate and was a country of conceptual petrification, then that would be one thing. But we all know that we have the finest minds and the greatest innovators in this country. We're a country that turned arid land for thousands of years to a green garden. A country that turns ocean water into drinking water. A country that has made sure to do the impossible at every opportunity. Israel now needs to recalculate its route. For example, in high tech, it has done that. There we are seeing unprecedented success, which is seen in an industry which only in the past 2 years has almost doubled itself. In 2013, $2.4 billion were invested in Israeli startups, and last year it's already $4.5 billion. The secret of high-tech is simple. It's constantly reinventing itself. What we have there in the high-tech industry is people who are greatly determined, obsessively, to create the next disruptive innovation. Today, more than ever, we are required to adopt the approach of high-tech, to take the good things from that area to a different area, to use the same conceptual freedom in our security approach. The startup nation needs to have a startup approach in security. In the face of our enemy's disruptive innovation, we, on our hand, must be prepared for the new battlefield. A responsible, innovative, skeptical approach, one that is not afraid to take old terms and completely change things around. We have to adopt the secret of Israel's success in high-tech and startups, and the ability to look at ourselves every day anew and to shatter the conceptions, the pre-existing conceptions. We have to have the daring to do that instead of buying more and more planes, instead of doing the same thing over and over again, just a little bit better each time and expect different results. We need to recalculate our route, to re-examine our basic assumptions on all levels and on all fronts, and see what can lead us on a new path. I present my approach and my opinions in the cabinet, and I fight for them and sometimes succeed. But here I will present a number of approaches that we need in order to recalculate our strategic read. Who is our enemy? For example, in the north. Do we need to accept the assumption that Hezbollah is our enemy? After all, we've been told morning, noon, and night that Hezbollah is the enemy, and that Iran is the enemy, and Hezbollah is just their proxy. If that's true, do we need to continue investing all our strength in harming the proxy while giving immunity to the real enemy? We have to ask ourselves, how is it possible in every confrontation against Hamas and Hezbollah we bleed, but the head of the octopus is immune? Why?
Why?
אנחנו צריכים
We
לשאול,
need to ask
האם באמת
ourselves,
תקציב המדינה משקף סדר
does
עדיפות
the
נכון,
national budget
באומץ,
really
בלי דעות קדומות?
reflect our
אנחנו
true
צריכים לענות
priorities
לעצמנו, האם יש
courageously
איזון
without
נכון
deceiving ourselves?
בין
Is there a
ההשקעות
true
התקציביות
balance between
בחזית הלוחמה
the
המשפטית,
budgetary
ההסברתית
investments
והתודעתית,
in public
שכולנו
diplomacy,
מבינים
legal
עד כמה הן משפיעות על
lawfare, and so
הצלחתנו
on, and see
בשדה
to
הקרב,
what effect
לבין
they
ההשקעה
impact what we do on the battlefield,
בנשק.
and compare that to our investment in
התשובה היא חד
arms.
משמעית
In
לא.
my opinion, the
אנחנו
answer
בהשקעת
is
חסר
unequivocally
בלתי
no.
מתקבלת על הדעת
We do not
בתחום
invest
הלוחמה
enough
המשפטית
in
והתודעתית.
lawfare
וצריך
and the war over the
סוף
hearts
סוף
and minds.
להבין
We need
שתודעה
finally to
ומשפט הם
understand
לא איזה
that
תבלינים
hearts
שאתה
and minds and
מקבל
law, those
את
are not
התוכנית
something that you
המבצעית,
a
אלא הם
spice that
יסוד
you spread
התוכנית
over your
המבצעית.
problem. They are the basis
לא
of
רק
the
סוגיה
operational
שאי אפשר
plan.
להתעלם ממנה.
And another issue we cannot
מה היחס שלנו
ignore.
לאוכלוסייה
How do we
האזרחית
relate to the
שמארחת
civilian
מרצון
population that is
טילים ורקטות
willingly
לתוך בתיה?
hosting
האם הם אויב?
rockets and missiles among
האם הם
themselves?
תמימים?
Are they an enemy?
האם
Are
הם
they
משהו
innocent?
באמצע?
Are they something
אולי
in the
הם
middle?
מנוף אסטרטגי?
And perhaps
האם
they
מקובל
are
למשל על תושבי
strategic
לבנון, אפילו השיעים
landscape.
שביניהם,
Is it acceptable to
שלבנון
the people of
תיחרב
Lebanon,
בגלל
even the
תחרות
women,
איראניות?
even the women among them, that
האם מודעים לזה?
Lebanon be destroyed
האם מודעים
because
מה
of
צפוי
Hezbollah?
להם?
Are they aware
אולי
of
לנו
what they
כדאי
can
ליידע
expect?
אותם,
Perhaps we
אפילו
ought to
עכשיו.
let them know, even now.
ולגבי עזה,
And regarding
ואתם הרי
Gaza,
לא תחשדו בי
and you
שאני
would not
שמאלן
suspect me
חלילה.
of being a
אבל האם
leftist, God
בעזה
forbid, but
אנחנו באמת
in
פועלים
Gaza,
כרגע נכון?
are we really doing the right
האם
thing
אולי
right
לא עדיף
now?
להשלים עם
Perhaps it
המציאות
wouldn't be
ולנתק
better to accept
את האחריות
the
שלנו
reality and
על
disconnect
העזתים,
our
לפתוח להם
responsibility
אפיקי
for the
חיים
Gazans
עם
and
בקרה
open up
ביטחונית נאותה,
new channels
אולי
of
גם
life with
להרוויח
proper
נכסים
supervision
אסטרטגיים
and
מזה.
perhaps thereby
ובכלל,
also
האם
acquire
נכון
strategic
להמשיך למדוד
assets?
את ההישגים
Perhaps
שלנו
we
על בסיס
do we
כמות
need to
החימוש
continue
שהנחתנו
measuring
על
our
האויב,
achievements
או אפילו
by
על
the
בסיס כמות
amount
הפגיעות?
of weaponry we
זה
land
באמת
on
מה
the enemy
שקובע?
or the number of
אולי מה
casualties? Is
שקובע
that
הוא
what counts?
היכולת
Perhaps what
השיורית של
counts
האויב,
is
כמה הוא יכול
the
להמשיך
residual
לפעול גם
capability
אחרי
that the
כל
enemy
החימוש
has,
שהנחתנו
even
עליהם.
after all the things
ועוד
we have
שאלה.
dropped on them?
אנחנו צריכים לשאול את
Another
עצמנו
question we
בעידן
need
הזה
to ask
ממקום אחר
ourselves
לגמרי.
in
האם
this
יש
period
תפקיד
from another place
ליהדות
completely.
התפוצות? האם אנחנו רואים
Do
בהם
the
נכס,
Jews of the
או
diaspora have a
שרק
role?
מקור
Are
לעלייה
they an asset or are they just a
לגיוס
source
תרומות?
of potential
בהסתכלות
immigration
20
and
ו-50 שנים
contributions?
קדימה.
We have to look 50
כמה
years
יהדות
ahead.
התפוצות הם נכס
To what
אסטרטגי
extent
לישראל?
Are the
ואם
Jews
הם
of the
נכס
diaspora
אסטרטגי
a
לישראל,
strategic asset
האם
to
תקציב
Israel? And
המדינה
if they
באמת
are,
משקף את זה?
does the
ובכלל,
budget
מה
reflect
תפקיד
that?
הדרג המדיני?
And what is the role of the political
אז יש
echelon?
שאלות
The
כבירות.
politicians.
אנחנו צריכים
Those are
פשוט
huge
לתת להם
questions.
יעדים
And
לצבא
we
ולתת
need,
להם לנסוע,
do we
או
just
אנחנו
need
צריכים
to
לחקור
give the
ולהעמיק
military
ולרדת לשטח?
goals and let them move ahead?
האם
Or should we
התפקיד
need to
שלנו
dig
כדרג
deeper
מדיני
down?
להרוויח
As
זמן
politicians,
עבור
is it
הכוחות?
our job to win
למה?
time
הזמן פועל
for
לטובתנו?
for the forces?
משהו
Why? Does
קרה,
time work in
משהו
our
טוב
favor?
קרה במהלך
Something good
51
happened
היום האלה?
during
האם
those, did
ועדת
something good
לוקר,
happen during those
רבותיי,
51 days?
שמונתה
The
על ידי
Locker
הנהגת
Committee,
המדינה,
which was appointed
ומיטב
by the
האנשים
leadership of
השקיעו
the
בה
country, and the finest
חודשים
people
רבים וארוכים.
spent many long months
האם
working on
הוועדה
their
לא
conclusions.
ראויה
Isn't that
לפחות לדיון
committee
אחד
at least
בפורום
worthy of
הרלוונטי?
one discussion in the relevant
תראו,
forum? Look,
אין לי מונופול על התשובות.
I don't
לכל
have a
השאלות
monopoly
האלה.
over the
יש לי
right
עמדות.
answers to those
יכול להיות
questions.
שהן
I have
נכונות.
positions, they may be
בהחלט
right,
יכול להיות שהן לא
and they
נכונות,
may
גם אני
even
טועה
be
בהרבה.
wrong. I make mistakes and not a few.
אבל השאלות
But the
מוכרחות
questions
להישאל.
need to be asked.
אני לא
I
אסכים לקבל מצב
refuse to
בו
accept a
השאלות
situation
החשובות
where the
ביותר
most
בבסיס
important
הקיום
questions
של
that
מדינת
underlie the
ישראל
very existence
לא
of the
נשאלות
state of
בכלל.
Israel are not even being asked.
רבותיי, לקראת
Ladies
סיום,
and
אני
gentlemen,
מדבר
before I
כאן
conclude,
כמי שהייתה לו
I'm
הזכות
speaking here as
לשרת
someone
בצה"ל
who had the
כלוחם,
privilege to
כמפקד,
serve in the IDF
קצין
as a
בקבע,
warrior,
כאיש
as a
מילואים.
commander in the regular
מדבר כאן
army and
כשר
in the
בממשלה,
reserves. I'm also
וכחבר
speaking here as a
קבינט,
minister and a member of the
שמתרגש
cabinet
כל פעם
who
לראות
is
את
moved
העוצמה
every time
האנושית
anew
הטמונה
to
בחיילי
see
צה"ל,
the
מפקדיו עד
human
הפיקוד העליון,
strength
גם
embodied
בדרום
in the
הפיקוד.
IDF from the
אני
bottom
מדבר
to the
גם
top in this generation
כאדם
too.
שהגיע
I also
לפוליטיקה
speak as
מעולם
person
ההייטק,
who
מ-
came to politics from the
שנים
world of
בהייטק,
high-tech
שראה
after
את
many years in
הסבירות
high-tech, who
והגמישות
saw the
המחשבתית
agility and the
שנוצרות כאן
conceptual
במדינת
flexibility
ישראל.
that we have
את
here in
היכולת
Israel,
להמציא את
the
עצמנו
ability to
מחדש.
reinvent
מי
ourselves each
שפגש
time anew,
את
as
היצירתיות
someone who
הישראלית בתצוגות
saw the
המרשימות
Israeli
ביותר שלו.
creativity face to face in the
מדבר כאן
most
כמי שמאמין שהגיע
impressive
הזמן שנהיה חזקים,
examples. I say the time has
לא
come
פחות
that we be
משאנחנו
strong
חזקים צבאית.
conceptually, no less than militarily.
שנהיה
The
מספיק
time has
חזקים
come that
כדי
we be
לנפץ
strong enough
תפיסות
to
יסוד שאבד
shatter
עליהן הקרח.
basic assumptions that are
בצומת
no
הדרכים
longer
שבו אנו
relevant.
עומדים,
At the juncture at which we
אנחנו
today
צריכים
stand,
לשוב
We need to go back to our Zionist fundamentals, to the national strength that characterized us from the earliest history, to daring and originality, creativity, and to be skeptical. We need to be dynamic, to be passionate to change, and to open up new gates of thinking. These basic fundamentals upon which the state was built must come back and guide us once again. Only true leadership that will preserve this spirit will succeed in bringing us to safe shores and enable us to get the security that we deserve. I have no doubt that with determination, creativity, and leadership, we can make the revolution that needs to be done, even in face of the fateful challenges we currently face. We have proven to ourselves in the past that we are capable of big revolutions. 2016, disruptive innovation needs to be done by Israel towards its enemy and not vice versa. Thank you very much.